How will the indomitable scientific research remain at the service of the physical and mental well-being of all? Two key words, education and ethics, which must be translated into practice. Étienne-Émile Beaulieu. The history of the Marine Biology Research Group started after Professor de Koning, a famous nematologist who became in charge of the zoology department at Ghent University. De Koning's first publication on marine nematodes is dated from 1930. Professor Carlo Hape started working in the zoology department as a PhD student, and in 1968 he initiated the first marine project called the brackish water study of the Dijvengat, a very small salt marsh pond in the northwest of the municipality of Knokke, near the nature reserve the Zwin. At that time, there were only 4 researchers and 2 technicians in the department. An important research project on the North Sea allowed the increase of the lab size and ended up with the creation of the Marine Biology section. In 1971, the Belgium science policy initiated by the Prime Minister launched a project called Project Sea in order to investigate the southern bight of the North Sea. Every Ghent University department was involved, as well as some other Belgian universities and foreign ones. The zoology department was in charge of the benthic biology and zoology, and this was the start of the marine biology section. In the beginning, the research was mostly related to meiofauna and macrofauna ecology, especially because of Professor de Koning's background as a nematologist. However, there was also a small group working on hyperbenthos, such as epibenthic small fish. From 1972 to 1991, Professor Carlo Hape published 51 scientific manuscripts on meiofauna, copepens and nematodes, and this was the beginning of his journey towards a renowned reputation. During this time, Professor Hape was the head of the Marine Biology section, which grew and became a group of more than 20 young researchers and technicians. He also did activities and supervised several students, among them future Professor Magda Vinks and Dr. Rudy Herman. Some even called them the Hape Gang. This was Professor Hape's management period. In 1975, the first European Marine Biology Symposium happened in Ostend. The symposium is an annual and quite important event for marine in the early 70s. Teaching methods evolved, and the famous Wimereux excursion and field trips to France were implemented. In 1977, there was a first visit to Calvi in Corsica to prepare the first summer school, which later became a place where many future students' projects took place. Although, in the 70s, some administrative changes took place. Due to health issues, Professor de Koning retired early and left his position as head of the biology department to Professor August Koemens. Some years later, during the 80s, the marine biology section got access to the chemical lab in order to carry out experiments related to nutrient analysis. In 1982, the marine biology section decided to be responsible for the newsletter from the International Association of Meiobenthologists, the so-called Salmonalia. Professor Carlo Hape was the editor, and Dr. Rudy Herman was his assistant editor. Together, they compiled 4 newsletters with the help of Dr. Rudy Herman's drawings. In parallel, in order to develop the research further, a culture lab for nematodes was built. Then, the first activity of the young ICES working group on benthos started, with the participation of Professor Hape, Dr. Rudy Herman, and Dr. Dirk van Damme. On a sampling intercalibration cruise on microbenthos sampling, with the Dutch research vessel Aurelia. This cruise led to an increase in the workload, and so it was necessary to recruit new researchers and technicians. In July 1983, after some sampling experiences with Professor Koemans and Professor Walter Verres, Guy Desmet was proposed to stay for short to help with sampling campaigns. In that same year, the 5th Meiofauna Conference was organized by the Marine Biology section.
You had at that time 4 people, researchers, some technical, two persons, and students working there. So I was one of the students, together with Guido Frank, who did a marine biology thesis at that time. Yeah. So because the group was very small, we were embedded in a few laboratories in the big Ledegang building. It's now renovated, of course, but at that time, at the 3rd floor, we had one corridor, and that was zoology. Also, the practical rooms were there, and some chemical labs. So we were there dispersed in 5 rooms. Was the marine biology section. That was the start, the very start. I did my master thesis and my licentiate thesis. Then I stayed, starting with a very big project that called the Concert. It was a very big project which called La Mer du Nord, the North Sea. And that was in fact the beginning of the very big marine biology group in Ghent. Yeah? Became more and more international. So we worked worked not only in Europe or with European partners. We started always to do some work in Africa as well, in Kenya, and in Morocco we went also for a while. And when I left, Magda Vinks was professor.
During all these years, Belgium sampling at sea was done on board of Belgian Navy vessels. The most used one was the A962 Mechelen, followed by smaller river mine sweepers, Eysselt or Kortrijk. The policy to use these ships back then was very strict. It was not possible to work at night, so the plan was usually to start very early in the morning and return late in the evening to the port. The sampling scheme was seasonal. The lab had approximately 1 week to visit about 24 monitoring stations at the Belgium continental shelf, which was about 3,600 square kilometers, and in addition to a number of specific sampling stations for the projects. The research development is increasing thanks to a new vessel entirely dedicated to research that is going to boost international cooperation. The sampling scheme was kept until 1984, when the research vessel Belgica was baptized. A real research vessel, which was at the disposal of the lab thanks to the Belgium Federal Science Policy Office. With the research vessel Belgica, it was possible to go at sea for up to 2 weeks. The Belgium Science Policy Department had a specific research program for submitting proposals to join their sampling campaigns. Many of these proposals were a stepping stage up to European proposals. So the beginning of the research vessel Belgica boosted the Belgian marine community and increased international cooperations. The arrival of the research vessel Belgica was followed by the starting date of future professor Anne van Reuzel as a PhD candidate in 1984. A few years later, in 1987, Professor Hape, who was the head of the department of the Marine Biology section, decided to move to the Netherlands. Then, by the end of Professor Magda Vinks' PhD, in the same year, she was promoted to be the coordinator of the marine biology. In 1988, she became senior research assistant. This event marked the start of new international collaborations. With Professor Magda Vinks as head of the department, new international collaborations are starting. The international network Professor Vinks, who in 1988 went to Mombasa in Kenya to engage in some teaching activities at the Kenyan Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. In 1989, Professor Anne van Reuzel started to work in the framework of an European project focusing on deep-sea research. Likewise, Dr. Rudi Herrmann started to do polar research in Antarctica on a collaboration with the German research vessel icebreaker Polarstern. In 1990, Dr. Rudi Herrmann left the marine biology section to work as an official representative of the Belgian government. In the same year, the marine biology section became an official research group within the Department of Biology. This event was followed by a decree that regionalized the universities in Belgium, turning the Ghent State University into Ghent University. Moreover, the Animal Morphology and Taxonomy Lab merged with the Botany Lab and the Lab for Ecology, Zoogeography and Nature Conservation into the more general biology department.
I was the first to start polar research in 1988-89 when we had a project presented at the European Polarstern study. I was there on board for 3 months and a half during that Polarstern study in the Antarctic Weddell Sea region. So we also had to provide the German station there for materials to stay over for another year. Went a little bit deeper in the Weddell Sea to the South Pole, in fact, where we always visit the British and the Russian base. So it was quite a very new world for me, but very interesting. And I learned there to know Professor Wolf Arntz, who was the director of the Alfred Wegener Institute of the Biology Division. So from the very big Alfred Wegener Institute at that time, it was one of the very big divisions.
In the years at the end of the 80s, early 90s, we went at sea very regularly, 4 or 5 days per month with the Luctor, sampling in the Voordelta, in the Westerschelde, in the Oosterschelde. These were very exciting times, very hard work, but very pleasant. We were in the field a lot. And then in parallel with that, we had people like André Catrice that were sampling in the salt marshes of Waarde and Saftingen. And these were also heroic sampling campaigns, often staying there 12 or 24 hours, trying to sample the hyperbenthos. And other people in our team sampled the demersal fish and studied the stomach contents, so we could make a match between what the fish eat and the prey populations that were available in these systems.
In 1991, a new collaboration started on polar research to go to the Arctic, and the year after, Professor Magda Vinks got a permanent position in the marine biology section as a lecturer. She hired Professor Tom Mons as a PhD to work on feeding experiments using marine nematodes. Dr. Rudi Herrmann said that Tom Mons brought new techniques, not only taxonomy and ecology. During that time, only 3 courses were taught by professors from the group. The late 90s was a synonym of new opportunities. After the promotion of Professor Magda Vinks as a senior lecturer, future Professor Marlene de Trock started a master thesis in the lab, followed by the start of a PhD the year after. Then, in October 1997, Professor Vinks became president of the Educational Commission of Biology, and in 1998, she officially became a professor. The year after, a new collaboration started with Professor Vinks as the coordinator of a large inter-university partnership between the Flemish universities and the Escuela Politécnica del Litoral in Guayaquil, Ecuador, where many PhD students could collaborate on topics related to sustainable management of Ecuadorian beaches and aquaculture.
It's actually the way that Magda was able to kind of convey her enthusiasm and also her confidence, because like she knew me very superficially from some practical sessions as a student, and then the way that she could like really almost get me into that topic from the first time, but I was still a bit hesitating. Then the second time when I went for the PhD, I was immediately sold. She had that gift of like giving you the idea that you were deciding exactly what you wanted to do, but actually it was her idea that you were going to to work on. But she gave you really the feeling. Look, it was really, I was coming out and was like, hey, I have a really good idea now. And then only months after you start thinking, yeah, that's actually, the starting idea was not mine, it was hers, but okay.
In 1988, for the first time in the study of nematology, a few marine species were included in a comprehensive molecular-based nematode phylogeny research. The species used in the study were isolated and identified by Professor Tom Mons, and this was the start of a future research which included molecular biology. After a new partnership and a few promotions, some novelties. In 1999, Dr. Tim Després built a generic system called NEMIS. The aim of this system was to store relevant information on species of nematodes, Mycida, amphibians, and Peperomia. In 2000, the field of molecular biology was gaining more and more importance, and the marine biology section saw an advantage in investing in that field of research and developed the Center of Molecular Phylogeny and Evolution. Future Dr. Thomas Remery started in that same year and was the first one in MarBiol doing molecular work. This collaboration was followed by 2 promotions for a permanent position, for Professor Anne van Russel and Guy de Smet. As a fresh professor, one of the first activities of Anne van Russel was the creation of a new 1-year master's program called MariLac. The lab is expanding, recruiting more and more persons, and so a relocation is necessary to welcome everyone. With the passing years, the marine biology research group was becoming bigger and bigger, and the lab was getting too small in order to give some people the chance to introduce their current research projects.
My first day in the lab, I remember it very, very well. I was assigned to help a thesis student in his work. He explained everything, and he said, well, come to me. I will take you to the place where the samples are. So we were just walking through the corridor, we went down, and another floor down, and another floor down, and we ended up in the basement, in the 2nd level of the basement, and then a door opened, and I was in the museum. So it was like, what? Place to me. I had no idea that there was all this kind of animals and a big collection of the museum. That was a big surprise, but then we went to the museum. After that, there was another door, and that opened, and there was the collection of the marine biology. So it was full of small pots and vessels with ethanol and formaldehyde and sediment, mainly sediment, but also a big part of fish. And that was the place where I had to get my samples, and I had to measure all the fish inside the pots, but it was like thousands and thousands. Welcome to the marine biology department.
In 2004, the Marine Biology Research Group became a member of the Marine Biodiversity and Ecosystem Functioning European Network of Excellence, MarBiol, coordinated by Professor Carlo Hayp. The purpose of this network was to disseminate knowledge on marine biodiversity to every stakeholder possible, big public, researchers, industries, and students. This project made a significant contribution to worldwide initiatives focusing on better describing and understanding the importance and biodiversity of marine organisms. This collaboration with MarBiol was followed by new international collaborations with Vietnam and the Netherlands, which are maintained until today. In 2006, Professor Mans got his professorship, and since then, he focuses on experimental marine ecology. During MarBiol's project, the idea of establishing a new international and specialized master has started, and in 2007, the International Master of Science in Marine Biodiversity and Conservation, IMBrsea+, was created. With the previous work of Dr. Thomas Emery on molecular work, Dr. Sophie Deriquet, Professor Tom Mans' PhD student, defended a PhD and became the lab specialist on molecular ecology, pushing the lab's molecular work a few levels higher. 2008 was a busy year for the Marine Biology Group. It started with the organization of an outreach weekend event called UGent at Sea. As Professor Magda Vinks explained, the main purpose of this event was to get out of the university ivory tower and reach the broad public. Different departments were involved in the event: the biology department, the aquaculture department, the phycology, prostitology, and aquatic ecology department. It was held and it helped the marine biology at Ghent University to gain more visibility. In the same year, Professor Marlene Detrac considered to work with fatty acids, and after reading a paper by Dr. Maria José Caramujo on fatty acids in freshwater copepods, she decided to invite her from Portugal to briefly work in the lab. For the first time, they conducted CSIA, compound-specific isotope analysis, in the Faculty of Bioengineering. These collaborations brought interesting results, and they showed that benthic copepods were able to bioconvert short-chain fatty acids into long-chain fatty acids, the so-called PUFAs. It was the start of a new field of research.
At that time, I spent like 1 week every month at sea. On board of the Belgica, we did sampling campaigns on hyperbenthos, mainly. Also other samplings, but mainly hyperbenthos samplings. Then at the Friese Front and the Doggersbank, which is in the North Sea, the north part of the North Sea. And there was a very good crew at that time. So, and since we went every month, 1 week, you get to know each other. And but during the day, we were working very hard. You get wet, of course. You have your sampling clothes on, but with protective layer, but still you get wet. So we had to dry our clothes very often. And we did it. We did it on a regular basis. We got dressed, hang our clothes outside, took them in the evening. And then one day we went out and it was like, did you take the clothes? Are they dry already? No, I don't have them. So our clothes disappeared. And then the next morning they were hanging in the mast. Instead of the flags, our trousers were there. So.
In 2010, the research group organized the 14th Meiofauna conference called Fortimco. Situated in the beautiful historic city centre of Ghent, they succeeded to gather together 250 participants. This conference happened just before Professor Carlo Hayp's retirement, and the group decided to do a celebration for him, as he was one of the founders of the Meiofauna conference. The year of 2010 was also very significant for the educational programs hosted and created by MarBiol. Marielac Master's program was evaluated that year, and after some discussions, the University of Brussels, Ghent and Antwerp started to collaborate to make it one unique program. Following that discussion, the master program Oceans and Lakes was created, an inter-university, multidisciplinary program very open to the international public. At the same time, the MARES network, a doctoral program on marine ecosystem health and conservation, assembled in Ghent for a meeting discussion on different practicalities to get the program operational. A year after, in 2011, Dr. Tim Després was starting the MARES program.
A lot of my work on intertidal environments. This is funny by itself because I'm a marine biologist, but I can hardly swim, and but I like to feel some solid ground under my feet. But solid ground is something that doesn't necessarily have a very strict meaning, particularly on a tidal flat. And I was actually involved in this European project where we were doing research on tidal flats in the Scheldt estuary. And at the same time, I was mentoring a master thesis of a Brazilian student. And on tidal flats, you often have in estuaries a transport of very fine particulate matter, so the mud fraction can really disappear in one time of the year and be redeposited on another tidal flat or another part of the tidal flat in another part of the year. And so we were going out sampling on a place that I recently discovered, and that was not very muddy. You would go into it with your boots and maybe down to your ankles, but not further. And then 2.5 months later, I go back to the same place, now this time with a student. And our boots must still be there somewhere because we both got completely stuck in the mud. We were really fortunate that we were carrying some large and relatively strong buckets. So we could put the buckets upside down on the mud so that we could press ourselves and get one leg out, try to get another leg out, try to get the other person out. So we were really struggling to just escape from the mud. And that was a difference of 2 or 3 months since the last time that I had just walked on that tidal flat.
In 2012, the Marine at UGent consortium was created, a consortium that unites all marine scientists from Ghent University and the Flemish Marine Institute. In that year, 2 big outreach events were organized by Arne Kainz, an IMBRsea student, with the help of Professor Magda Vinks, to encourage the university restaurants to be respectful concerning the origin of the fish they served. This event was called Sustainable Fish, and the purpose was to sensitize people about their eating choice and to make them aware of what would happen if fish stocks were really going down. This event contained degustation of jellyfish toast, and they also obtained the signature of a charter for sustainable seafood at the university. The year after, another event on sustainable backcatch was organized to raise awareness on the amount of other organisms that are also fished next to the fish species of economic interest. February 2013, the Marine at UGent consortium decided to organize another outreach event, a marine art exhibition. Young artists from children to adults gave their impression about the sea, and an exposition in collaboration with the School of Arts was organized in the main hall of Ghent University. At this time, the number of courses taught by the Marine Biology Research Group had increased to 13 courses. In the same year, the Marine Training Platform was initiated by Tim Després as one of the services contained in the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures, ESFRI, one of the European Marine Biological Resources Centre, IMBRsea projects, in order to facilitate and centralize access to marine human capacity building opportunities in Europe. Although, in 2013, some changes occurred in the research projects, and with the advent of potential deep-sea mining activities, Professor Anne van Roozel decided to invest more time on this research topic. In 2014, the NEMIS database was unfortunately hacked, so the lab decided to integrate the database into the WORMS database, which was managed by the VLIS, and delegate the website management to the AFIA data management team. Although, in the same year, a contract was signed with DEME, a Belgian dredging and mining company with great interest in deep-sea mining and which has a license area in the Pacific. This was one of the first contracts MarBiol had which was related to the industry. The main task of MarBiol was to conduct the environmental impact assessment related to mining areas. Although, in 2014, the IMBRsea project started to be funded by the Flemish government. This was also the occasion to become a part of a consortium, to learn from others, and to have a label.
I had this one case study during my PhD. So for my PhD, I tracked and tagged eels in various systems from kind of wetland areas, rivers, estuaries, canals. And there was this one particular area we tried to set up this telemetry study that was in the drowned land of Saftingen in the Netherlands. So it's a salt marsh creek area. So it was a lot of walking and strolling through a system full of mud, quicksand, whatsoever. But after a couple of weeks work, finally the network was deployed, it was operational. So then the next thing was starting to catch the eels. And of course, according to all the textbooks about eels and fish, these salt marshes are very productive systems and should be full of eels. They are in open connection with the sea, so colonization is really rapid, really easy for them. So it should be full of eels. During one of the last days that we were deploying our detection stations, we had a couple of fight nets, so we quickly dropped some nets in the system to just have a quick catch and see if we would find an eel. And the day after, we checked the nets and we already had one decent eel to tag. So we were quite happy with that. And we thought that there would be not a problem at all to catch only 15 eels. And then everything, then the whole story started. So the next, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks, I was basically every day in the system, walking around with through the mud with all the equipment and a lot of fight nets, but I never saw an eel again in the whole system. So yeah, I still feel a bit beaten by the system. The people working there, because it's some kind of nature reserve with a lot of guides and everything, they all were laughing with me, saying that I caught and tagged the only eel of the system. In the beginning I said, nah, it's not true, we'll catch plenty more, because I had a lot of spots I wanted to try to fish. But no more eels came out of the system. So yeah, it was both funny as pity.
2015 was an emotional year to many MarBiolers. First, the Ledegenstraat campus had to be renovated, and consequently, the molecular lab was transferred to new facilities. So, from then, the Center of Molecular Phylogeny and Evolution was a joint effort between marine biology, prostitology, and aquatic ecology, phycology, terrestrial ecology, botany, and mycology. But the most important event of 2015 was Professor McDavin's retirement. During McDavin's direction, the lab changed considerably, increasing its renown and reputation, developing new research topics, and recruiting more and more persons, such as Professor Anne van Roozel, who is now the new head of the department. Professor McDavin's was working in the lab since 1977, and this led to some unfavour inside the lab. Following this announcement, Marlene de Trock was promoted to a permanent position as professor, and Professor Anne van Roozel became the new head of the lab. A retirement party was organized for Professor McDavin's. There was a marine family event on the 27th of September 2015 at Austin Beach, and everyone from the lab has joined with their families. During the day, There were a lot of family activities, and at the end of the afternoon, a splendid dessert buffet was served to everyone in Fort Napoleon. The second event, an academic session with many speakers, including the rector and many invitees, was held on October 2, 2015, in the Aula building of Ghent University, followed by a splendid reception. In 2016, 53 persons were working in the lab. In that year, MarBiol also organized the final meeting of the MIDAS project, a project related to deep-sea mining. The purpose of the meeting was to bring scientists together to discuss the research and results. This illustrates the pivotal role MarBiol had within the European deep-sea mining network. In the meantime, the IMBRsea, the International Master in Marine Biological Resources, replaced the IMBrsea Plus program, with more partners and the support of the European Marine Biological Resource Centre.
My time in Ecuador, I got seriously stuck in the mangroves there. So I was there with the thesis student from the IMBrsea, and we went to the mangroves together. We had these big wading suits on, and we went in. It was a very polluted site, which really smelled strongly of all kinds of stuff. And she got stuck, and so I was like, all right, I'll come and save you. So I put my arms down in the mud to reach her foot. So I'm like with my cheek on the polluted mud to like pull her out. And eventually I was able to pull out her one feet and her other feet. And then she was just like flat on her belly on the mud. So she was like crawling to the sides. And because I was pulling her out, I got more stuck in the mud. So I was really like up until over my belly button, stuck in the mud in this wading suit. And the tide was coming in, so it was just getting more drenchy. I was really like, how am I ever gonna get out of here? So I couldn't move anything anymore. And the driver of our car, he had to go and buy a rope in a store close by to like throw to me, so they could like all try to pull me out. And it didn't really work. So eventually I had to get out of the wading suit. And I just had to go out on my socks and on my normal clothes on the mud flat and like crawl and drag the suit behind me because I just couldn't get out anymore. Yeah, that was really funny to be there and just be like, okay, we're gonna buy a rope and pull you out. And the tide was coming in, and I was really thinking I might die here or something. Afterwards, it's very funny. Yeah, I really thought this could end really badly, but in the end we had a lot of laughs because both me and my student were just completely black, and then we still had to sit in the car to drive back to the university. Yeah, just being stuck in the mud is always funny.
In December 2018, the Nematology Research Unit and the Marine Biology Research Group organized a 2-week identification course on aquatic nematodes, ICANN, which took place in Ghent. This course was followed by 17 international students, and it was lectured by different teachers. A year after, the MARES doctoral program ceased to continue due to a lack of funding. Then, in March 2019, after a roundtable discussion held in the annual Internal Lab Symposium, where it was mentioned that there was a need for improvement in both the internal and external communication, the research group decided to start an Instagram account, a WhatsApp group, and a Twitter account to reach both a wider audience as well as increase interaction amongst colleagues. Educational development is also very important in the lab, and it has been developed since 1991 with more teaching activities, new master's programs, and more internationalization. Up to present, there are 42 persons working in the lab, and 33 courses are taught by professors, postdocs, and PhD students. In the last 10 years, the research has expanded to the use of molecular, fatty acids, stable isotopes, and experimental approaches to answer all sorts of ecological questions. Moreover, the majority of the research is not restricted to meiofauna, despite the background on meiofauna research from professors Anne van Reuzel, Tom Mons, and Marlene de Trock. Professor McDavids always said the two keywords of our research are salt and bottom. This means that our expertise lies in the life present in a salt environment and in relation with the bottom, including all regulating factors important for the structuring and the functioning of those benthic ecosystems. During the current interviews, people were asked to answer deeper questions about their feeling on the evolution of science in the lab and the changes they have noticed throughout the years. From the 16 persons interviewed, the majority of the science in the lab was more practical and more applied, that there were big technological changes, more interdisciplinarity, and more turnover with fewer people working in the lab recently. Finally, they expressed their thoughts on what they think will happen during the following years in the lab. Due to the current diversity of topics, some people answered that a split into different labs may happen. Moreover, there were some contradictions where people were sure that the lab would still focus on applied science, while others said that the lab would mainly focus on fundamental research. The last words goes to Professor Hape. Contrary to common perception, marine biodiversity in European seas may be actually increasing as a result of climate change and the introduction of invasive species. The challenge is therefore not only to protect threatened species and habitats, but also to predict the consequences of changing biodiversity for the functioning and therefore the management of marine ecosystems.